All right, I got this thing all raised back up, so let's see if we can get this transmission tunnel knocked out. All right, well, I got the top welded here. You know, it's not super pretty, but I'm gonna put a bunch of seam sealer on this guy anyway. In fact, I'm just gonna seam seal the whole thing inside and out, you know, just to make sure it's nice and sealed and all that. So I'm not really too worried about getting these welds nice and pretty. I was hoping to save as much of this paint as possible, but I kind of didn't really think about the fact that it's just gonna burn off on the top here. So, you know, that's not ideal, but that's okay. I'm not gonna really worry about it too much right now. I'm definitely gonna be hitting this with like primer and then black undercoat once I'm finished. But this guy, you know, I'm not quite sure yet. Maybe I'll just try and make a line and then just have sort of like the black undercoating come up to cover this bare metal. Or, you know, if I feel like making it look really pretty, I can always go back to the paint shop and have them mix up a little bit of this paint so I can maybe spray paint the rest of this just to blend it in. But the shape looks pretty good. You know, it's bending in nicely. So far, so good. I do have to do some trimming here to kind of match these guys up. These ended up with a lot more space than I needed, so I think I'm going to have to just cut this guy, and then I'm going to bend this piece back into this. All right, so I got my crossmember, or you know, my transmission mount bolt hole reinforcement sort of tubes welded in there. So these guys just barely fit those bolts through, and this makes sure that you know, when I tighten down that crossmember, it doesn't crush this, you know, this crossmember here. And you know, it maybe adds a little bit of structural strength to this guy too. You know, it might help twisting a little bit. So that's good. Got them welded in on both sides, and that guy down there. So now I think it's time to fully weld this guy in here, this piece, because pretty soon I'm going to put those pieces here to start boxing this guy in. So the first step is just to make sure this is fully welded here to this crossmember here and here, I guess. So this is a pretty thick piece of steel. This is 3/16. So I have to actually switch out the wire thickness so that I can actually weld that thick 3/16 steel. All right, well, I have began welding. Actually, pretty much have this thing fully welded. These, you know, these cross little beam things. And yeah, it's coming along pretty good, actually. I might have to do, they're pretty straight. Yeah, it's not easy for me to film welding because it's just so, you know, there's so much splatter and, you know, all of that. So I don't want to damage my camera here, my phone. But yeah, it's coming along pretty good. I was kind of like, kind of dragging my feet on this part because it's, you know, it's such a commitment. But, you know, at some point you just got to do it. And I think it might be time to put the top crossbar in there. And these last little, I do have a couple of pieces that are going to go here. Let me grab it. like this guy, that are gonna go in here to kind of finish it off. But once I weld this in, I'm not gonna be able to weld this, this top guy here to this center one. You know, I can get the outer one from the outside edge, and then I can get this guy from the outside edge, but I can't get to that middle one. And I do want to put some welds from this middle guy into the top thing. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and weld the bar over first, and then kind of slide this guy in, you know, like that, and then weld the outside, and then weld the top too. All right, this gives you an idea here. This guy's sitting pretty flush. There's a little bit of a gap here, which I can just pinch together with a, you know, some sort of clamp or something. But otherwise, this gap's looking pretty good. And as it stands now, this kind of like rides the top of the kind of the channel here where the old crossmember was. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it down here to kind of slant into it, and I can get a good diagonal weld on both sides to the inside of this guy. And I think that'll reach back far enough to get some good structure on this original crossmember. And so to give you an idea on this guy, once that's all done, I mean, this one slots in pretty well. Pretty much just like that. Actually, that's cut pretty good. You know, I could maybe shave it down just a little bit here. Doesn't really matter too much, but otherwise, that guy's fitting in there actually really awesome. I guess I'll probably want to clamp this guy down to close this gap here too. On this side, there's a little bit of a gap, so I think what I'm going to do is just bend this guy back in, because there's like an even gap all the way around, so I just need to shape it just slightly. This thing's coming along though, it's almost there. Just a couple more little trims, a few bends on this guy, and I'll bend these tabs in. You know, I left a little bit of a tab there just so I can kind of bend in and create more of a sealed structure there, so I'll do that. It's awesome to see this guy almost done. So I got this guy all clamped down, and I like how flush it's fitting into the bottom part. So I think the last part I'm going to weld is this arm down here. That needs to come down a little bit more, but I ran out of clamps. So I'll just start with this side, start tack welding as I go, and then start removing these clamps as I finish the tack welds. All right, not too much left to do. I do want to definitely really get some good welds on the frame rail too, both sides. There's a little bit of a bump up here, so, you know, I'll just kind of shape the floor pan to, you know, have a little bump there. One thing I do want to do while I'm here too is put in these little guys, these little wedge pieces here to kind of complete the dome shape here. Those guys are still fitting good. Cool. Oh, I guess I do still have to weld in these guys as well. So there'll be these little last kind of end pieces here to fully box in this guy, but definitely feels solid. I mean, that's a solid crossmember right there, for sure. All right, there you go. Got this thing all fully welded in and pretty much finished. So I did put those last pieces here and here. So now we actually have 3 ribs that go through this crossmember. You know, one right here in the middle, which you can actually see just right here. And then I put the 2 outer sort of caps. And then of course we have the last one, which is this guy I got it all, welded in and connected to this cross member here. One other thing I managed to do also was to kind of integrate it with these bolt hole reinforcements. I don't know if you can see in there, but that tube that you can see just right there is the place that the transmission, mount cross member bolts through. So it gives it a really good strong point. And I managed to do that on the two inner bolt holes as well. The outer ones were covered by this guy, but I did bolt those to the, or I did weld those to the bottom plate. That's good. That should help with the rigidity. But man, this thing feels solid. Like, I don't know, there's no good way to like really test it, but just by looking at it and, kind of like shaking this thing, you can tell this thing's really quite a tough piece. I mean, I'm sure I didn't have to weld every single last bit, but I thought might as well, I just have a couple of little things left, I want to fill in just these few gaps here, so I'll probably just make a little tiny piece of metal here and go ahead and fully weld this guy in, so I fully box in everything that I can. There's also a little bit of a piece right here too that I want to fully weld in right there. I did weld through primer on the inside of this guy just so that there isn't or as little bare metal as showing as possible. Of course, this outer guy, I'll get the chance to like rough it up, and prime it and then paint it, and probably do some undercoating on it too. So, and then I think what I'm going to do is grind down these edges just a little bit, probably make it close to flush with that center thing, just to give myself as much room around the shifter as possible. Yeah, I'm happy. Man, it feels good to have this thing done. This was like the big piece of the puzzle, and it's so good to see it, fully welded out. And so from here, all I got to do is finish out this transmission tunnel and redo some seam sealer. I guess I still have to finish that transmission cross member, but at least I can do that out of the car. This front side actually came out really good. The pieces fit really well up here, and there really wasn't much left over to box in. I still have this last little bit here. I'll cut a little piece and finish that up. This guy went perfect, and then of course I boxed this one in too, just to give it a little bit more rigidity there. And I don't think I took a video of it, but I did put a wedge piece, so that'll be something like like a triangle like this right here, just like, and I welded it to the back of this guy. That way, any sort of motion this way is going to be held up with that triangle. And then I boxed in the two separate sides here so I can get a good weld down the middle of this piece here. So actually these two pieces are on either side of this triangle here. I did the same for this guy, and actually you can still see a little bit through there, that triangle right there. But I just used the one piece, so this piece is not connected to that triangle, but you still get that strength, resistance from trying to bend this way. And then this guy just kind of seals it up, and then also gives it a little bit more, of a triangle shape there. There's the inside of this sort of dome shape that I've made here, and made sure to fully weld, everything all around. All right, so now that I got this torsion bar cross member, reinforcement thing sorted out, it's time to get this transmission tunnel finished up and this thing all sealed up. So I have the transmission tunnel welding started, and I'm just gonna start tacking it in here. Now, I was really working hard and kind of stressing out about getting this thing bent to seal every single little gap perfectly, and I realized that I can just, make a few little small pieces to fill in some of these gaps here. That'll be much easier as opposed to like trying to worry to craft this thing exactly the way it's supposed to be. It's not gonna matter to have a little bit of patching here and there. I'm gonna cover all of this stuff with seam sealer, and then I'm gonna do some undercoating, and on the inside, of course, it's gonna be all coated and then covered with, insulation and carpet. So I really am not too worried about that. All right, so I got a pretty good couple of pieces going here. I was worried at some point that this guy was bending in a little bit too much, because I can see, you know, lining it up from the crossmember here, that it does kind of swoop in, and I was trying to reshape it, but then, you know, I checked on the transmission, and it definitely does live, you know, more over on this side, so it makes more sense that this is a little bit steeper, and then this guy can bend in a little closer. That's nice. It'll give me a little bit more leg room right there anyway, so I'll just I'll trust my measurements. You know, I'm pretty close to, I did drill some holes to kind of like mount this guy. I've since cut off this piece right here, but the holes were still lining up, so I think I'm okay. Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous that I'm going to, you know, get this all finished up and all looking nice and undercoated, and then it's not going to fit, because I was pretty close to that transmission, but I'll deal with any sort of like rubbing that might come up later. You know, that's what the hammer's for, I guess. So I pretty much have my top piece up there all welded up, and then this guy here is mostly welded. I do have it welded all the way down the side, and then most of this piece here, I just have a little sliver to cut and weld it. This side is the one I'm struggling with because there's such a dip right here, so I've cut that into two, and I'm going to end up with a pie shape I'm going to need to fill in there later. I didn't make any piece yet for this back section because there was no clearance issues, and I figured I would just take care of it when the transmission's out of here. So I'll need to make, you know, a cardboard template to kind of cover this guy and join up to here. But for this middle section here, I do have this last piece, and I've trimmed this guy to just precisely, you know, match with this one. And we're looking pretty good. Yeah, there we go, more or less like that. Matches up pretty good. Well, it's not really something I can do with one hand, but you get the idea. There you go, something like that. All right, got that middle section pretty much fully welded in there, and then we have this this third section mostly welded in there. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of shaping here to join this guy with this guy right here. You know, what I've been doing with the front ones is just kind of roughly cutting where this floor meets, and then I'm bending this original floor up to kind of meet this downward slope, because it's hard to bend this guy once it's in the car. I've found it's a little bit thicker, I think. This side's looking pretty good, actually, probably a little bit better. So I think since this one's so close to the shape it needs to be, I think I'm going to cut the floor here and just join that guy straight down there. Here's what the bottom side turned out like. And I'm pretty pleased with this fitment here. You know, these pieces actually joined up pretty darn good. And I think the shape of the tunnel came out pretty good too. It does kind of bend in a little bit this way, and I verified that that actually is the shape of the transmission. There's sort of more transmission here on the passenger side than there is the driver's side. It kind of, you know, it kind of hooks in like this, and then this part kind of goes straight down. So from what I can tell, the shape is pretty good. Got the sides trimmed off of that cross member, and man, that thing's looking awesome. I'm really happy about how that turned out. So I did mention earlier wanting to run a stock, factory center console for this guy, and it's been on my mind since I started building this transmission tunnel. And I gotta say, when I first started this thing, I didn't really think there was any hope for that. The original transmission tunnel is it's very low, and it's very flat. And this guy's gonna be it's gonna be a lot larger, but then it's also gonna have this sort of sharp drop off here. And I know that the shifter is right here, and there's like this whole kind of center console glove box thing that sits here. So I pictured it kind of like hanging off the edge of a cliff here, and I just didn't think there was any hope for that. But I do have this factory original console. I think this was originally a manual console. I think this is the way you can tell, is this cutout right here. And it's pretty beat up. It's kind of broken in a few places. So I thought this would be a good candidate to hack up, cut up to how I need it to be. I picked this guy up for like 20 bucks, I think, a while back, and thinking I might be able to use it one day, And actually, surprisingly, on sort of first glance, it's not too bad. It was actually sort of promising. So that's how it sits in there currently. And it's actually a lot closer than I thought it would be. My idea is to cut it, probably pretty close to the top, and then just sort of try and mimic the shape of the transmission tunnel. And then down here, it will be its full shape. And this actually will eliminate this, what I always thought was sort of an ugly little like notch cut out here. That's gonna go away, and it's just gonna go straight down. And then this bulky area here will actually be covering the gap here that doesn't exist. And actually it kind of will, I'm hoping it'll make it look like, the transmission tunnel is a normal shape, and kind of hide that sort of bump shape here, if you will. I'm not sure how that's gonna turn out, but the measurements are there. It seems like it could be possible. So one other kind of issue here is the fact that originally the shifter, of course, was over to the side, and now it's in the middle. So if I position this more or less, basically as far over right as I can without hanging over the edge, that's pretty much centered right there on the transmission tunnel. It's not too far over to the right. It's about as much as I can get away with. I'm kind of eyeballing it, and if I trim this back, I think it might, I'll probably go right to the edge of this guy here. All right, there we go. Got this thing done, finished, sealed off. Got the shifter hole cut out here. I think that's it. I'm finally done welding inside my car, which was always kind of a stressful thing to do, shooting welding sparks, and then cutting in here was kind of awful too. So gosh, I'm just really excited to have this thing done.